Students, you are welcome to biology class. The topic for our lesson today is some properties and functions of the cell. It's the continuation of our last lesson. Remember, in our last lesson, we discussed that the properties and functions of the cells are all the characteristics shown by living cell. So the subtopic for today under that topic is reproduction. So, and the content we are going to discuss under reproduction, remember that reproduction is also one of the characteristics shown by living cell. So under this topic, we are going to discuss definition of reproduction and two forms of reproduction. So definition of reproduction. Definition of reproduction. Reproduction can be defined as the ability of living organisms to produce new living individuals that resemble them. That is the definition of reproduction. Once again, let me take it again. That is the ability of a living organism to give rise to new living individuals that resemble itself. So, with this process, a living organisms or all living organisms are capable of living from generation to generation. So, don't you see that reproduction is a good thing? It continues the life existence of a living organism. Reproduction is different from giving birth. Not all living organisms can give birth. It is only animals that give birth, but all living organisms can reproduce. So reproduction is different from birth. So plants cannot give birth. So it is only animals, not all animals. It is only mammals that give birth. So forms of reproduction. Forms of reproduction. Forms of reproduction. Or types. Forms of reproduction or types of reproduction. So we have two forms or types of reproduction. One, asexual. Asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction. Two, asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction. So these are the two forms of reproduction. So asexual reproduction now, asexual. Asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction. So in asexual reproduction, it's a type of reproduction in which a living individuals give rise to new living organism by itself. So it's the process through which a living organism give rise to new living individuals by itself. And what are the features? What are the features of asexual reproduction? What are the features of asexual reproduction? So features of asexual reproduction. Features. Remember, I told you that asexual reproduction is a type of reproduction that involves a single parent that give rise to new living individuals by itself. And what are the features? One, it involves single parent. It involves single parents. Two, no fusion. No fusion of male and female gametes. No fusion of male and female gametes. That is sex cells. Sex cells. So gametes are called sex cells. So in asexual reproduction, there's no fusion of male and female gametes. And what are the sex cells? These are the male sperms and the female egg. Then three, another features of asexual reproduction is that individuals or offspring produce are identical. So the individuals produced as a result of sexual reproductions are identical. That is, clones. They are clones to themselves. So these are the features of asexual reproduction. And again, no gametes production. No gametes production. No gametes production. No gametes production. So these are the features of asexual reproduction. So now we are going to see examples of asexual reproduction. Examples of asexual reproduction. Example of asexual reproduction. 1. Fission. Fission. 2. Budding. 3. Spore formation. Spore formation. Spore formation. 4. Fragmentation. Fragmentation. And lastly, vegetative propagation. Vegetative propagation. So fission. So in this type of asexual reproduction, an individual organism split into two. So the organism split into two or more individuals. So this is a fission. And examples of organisms that reproduce by fission. Are the unicellular organism. Unicellular organism, such as Spirogyra, Chlamydomonas, Euglena, etc. So when we say that it's a type of reproduction in unicellular organism, what do we mean by unicellular organism? Organism that is only one cell thick, that is made up of only one cell, are called unicellular organism. Budding is the outgrowth on an organism. Is the outgrowth on an organism which breaks away and live independent life So examples of organisms that reproduce by budding. Examples of organisms that reproduce by budding are Hydra. So examples of organisms that reproduce by budding are Hydra, yeast. I think you all know yeast, used in baking bread and put your puff. Hydra, yeast, and coral polyps. So these coral polyps are found in the oceans. So these are examples of organisms that reproduce by fission. Spore formation. So spores are small round bodies. They are produced in large quantities. They are very light and they can be carried by wind, so that when they land on a favorable environment, then they grow into new organisms. Examples of organisms that are reproduced by spore formation. Examples of organisms that reproduce by spore formation are bacteria, amoeba, fungi like mushrooms, etc. Because of our time. So these are organisms that are reproduced by spore formation. Fragmentation. In fragmentation, the organisms break away and live new life. And examples of organisms that are reproduced by fragmentation are Spirogyra. It's an example of organisms that live by fragmentation. So remember when we are talking about fission, we said that the organisms can divide into two or more. So where the organisms divide into two individual organisms, such type of fission is called binary fission. In case where the organisms divide or split into several organisms, it's called multiple fission. So we are going to stop here today because of our time. Next class, we are going to talk on another asexual reproduction, which is vegetative propagation. So this vegetative propagation is an asexual reproduction in which a new plant is produced from any part of the plant except the seed. We are going to talk about this next class.